This is Hacker Public Radio, episode 3649 for Thursday, the 28th of July 2022. Today's show is entitled Linux Inlaws S01E61, 20 Years in Review. It is hosted by Monochromic and is about 72 minutes long. It carries an explicit flag. The summary is the last 20 years in review.
This is Linux Inlaws, a podcast on topics around free and open source software, any associated contraband, communism, the revolution in general, and whatever else fancies your tickle. Please note that this and other episodes may contain strong language, offensive humor, and other certainly not politically correct language. You have been warned. Our parents insisted on this disclaimer. Happy, Mum? Thus, the content is not suitable for consumption in the workplace, especially when played back on a speaker in an open plan office or similar environments. Any minors under the age of 35, or any pets, including fluffy little killer bunnies, your trusted guide dog, unless on speed, and cute T-Rexes or other associated dinosaurs. Please note that the events, personae, and timelines discussed in the following episode are purely fictitious, as they may have occurred in a parallel universe. This especially applies to conclusions drawn from these, including any investments decisions. You have been warned. This is Linux Inlaws, Season 1, Episode 61. How are things, Martin?
Well, since it's
May, June?
May,
almost?
And it's going to be my, I can't remember now. Don't know if they're going to
17th
let me
birthday.
out the wheelchair today. But, yes. Things have moved on a bit, so we are on.
But first of all, Martin will thank the Queen.
The Queen,
for
yes.
for about 30 bank holidays. Maybe more.
Just well, I mean, there's one every year, of course, but well, in fact, there's 2 bank holidays every year for. Actually, no, only one of them is for the Queen's birthday. But yeah, this year we have 2. So thank you very much, the Queen. It's very thoughtful, and we shall celebrate your 70-year anniversary. So to the Queen.
Okay, to the Queen, yes. You finally have converted.
Jabra, yeah. Sorry, carry on.
So, Martin, you have finally converted to a full royalist in that case. Because
I have no idea what a full royalist is, to be honest.
Well, people that cherish the Queen because of that extra day off.
Well, I think everybody cherishes the Queen, actually.
I wouldn't go that far in my case.
Well, you don't have a queen. You just have some
dodgy
bloke who buys gas from Putin, is that?
Plus the fact that I'm don't worry about it. Plus the fact that I'm half Irish anyway, so the concept of a queen is not exactly. Well, yes, I mean I'm half Irish almost.
What do you mean you're half Irish? Are you half Irish? Or
No, I'm half Irish. Simple as that.
49% or something.
49.5. Yes, the last time I looked.
Okay.
It just. I mean, if you live in this country for long enough, it gets to you in terms of you notice that addiction. So, needless to say, being a half Irish almost and being a royalist is not compatible.
Well, it depends which part of Ireland, right?
Well, there's only one real island.
Well, you say that, but
if
it's all the same islands.
If 1922 in other history is anything to go by.
It's, yeah. Indeed. Okay. How do we get
to the
on
episode at hand? Yes. We should probably explain what this is all about before our listeners get even more confused.
Oh.
Now, the following episode, yes. Anything you want to add before I do the explanation?
Well, what are you celebrating?
I'm celebrating. I'm not celebrating anything.
Oh, well, you're not thanking your chancellor for the the funding
for the heavy weapons that he's about to ship into the Ukraine. Olaf Scholz, if you're listening, this is for you. Well done. After about 2 years of procrastination. I'm joking. Only about 2 months.
Indeed.
And full marks for this swap deal, or whatever it's called, as in this triangle of we're gonna give some Baltic states weapons, and in turn they're gonna give their old weapons to the Ukraine or something.
Mm-hmm.
A smart move.
Yes. Very good.
Are you envying us, Martin, that we have such a brave chancellor?
I don't think that word has been associated with him in any publication I've seen. Okay.
Fair enough. I wonder why that is, Martin.
Yeah, indeed.
And not to worry about this. Martin, before we go into the episode that has been brought back from the future, probably now's the time to shed some light actually on where we are in 2022 with regards to, funny enough, download figures.
Okay, I thought.
And any idea, Martin, how many people listen to us?
I was been told that HPR doesn't collect any of these stats,
which is very true. Yes, but you see, HPR has this wonderful trait. I'm tempted to add that they mirror the MP3s on something called archive.org. Details maybe in the show notes. Archive.org actually does keep stats. And funny enough, on archive.org, and they only keep stats for the published episodes. So if you take a look at the calendar, the episodes that have been released but do not feature on the RSS feed, probably you will not see on archive.org. But if I take a look at archive, or if we take a look at archive.org, for the last 1 year or almost 1 year and a half, we clock in on average between 1,500 and 2,500 listeners. Given the fact that we have launched this podcast short of 2.5 years ago, that's quite amazing. That's my impression anyway, or that's my opinion rather.
Yeah, no, that's... Well, thank you, listeners, for sticking with us. Hope you enjoyed it as much as we did.
Yes. What was the details will be explained in a minute.
Okay.
Or two. What started out as a hobby project apparently now has attracted a significant audience, because if you just use your favorite search engine, HPR and thus archive.org is only a fraction of our listenership. There's a chap out there on YouTube that scrapes the episodes and puts us up there. So whoever you are, thank you. Because if you go to YouTube and type in Linux Inlaws, you get to that feed, which is the audio, of course, plus some logo, I think.
It's probably not quite the right medium for it, but...
Yes, but the fact alone tells you something. Never mind the number of sources that simply syndicate us and give us credit. So I reckon it's fair to say, summing this up, and this is just a projection, on average, we are listened to by anything between 5,000 and 10,000 listeners per episode, given the fact that, as I said, quite a few people syndicate us.
Sure you got the decimal point in the right place there.
Say again?
Are you sure you got the decimal point in the right place there?
Maybe I'm off by magnitude, so maybe it's just 50,000 to 100,000 people. I don't know. No, jokes aside, people, a big thank you from the two of us, because without you, this would not be possible. People wouldn't syndicate us if the listenership wouldn't be out there. And needless to say, if you think there's anything worth improving, the email address is sponsors@linuxinlaws.eu. No, I'm joking. It's, of course, feedback@linuxinlaws.eu.
However, there is also a sponsor stop list.
Yes. So the Microsofts, the Googles of the world. Never mind the Teslas and all the rest of them. If you want to send us money, please get in touch via sponsor@linuxinlaws.eu. And we may have, in the future, a Patreon feed, but it's purely optional. That remains to be seen. But the content will always be Creative Commons, attribution, share alike. Because that's exactly the license that we choose to publish the podcast under.
Yep.
And with that, onto the episode. Yeah, but before we gonna go into the future, maybe we should explain why we are publishing, is that the word I'm looking for? Why we're releasing a future episode. Because funny enough, the following about 4 hours, maybe I'm gonna cut this down to 2. Maybe in HPR will cut it down back to 1 hour again. I'm joking, Ken, if you're listening. No, jokes aside. The following episode has been recorded in 2042 and through time travel has made it back to the year 2022. So this is the reason why we're calling this 20 years in review. To be precise, of course, it should be 24 years in review because we started the podcast about 2 years ago. But anyway, it doesn't matter. But before basically we go into that future episode, we should probably explain how time travel is possible. Martin, you want to give it a go?
Well, you just get yourself a DeLorean.
Yes! Links will be in the show notes.
Strap a bunch of bits to the outside.
Very much so.
Stuff happens.
Doc Martin, if you're listening, this episode is also for you.
Indeed, yes. Yeah.
On a slightly more serious note, no. I was more referring to the theoretical concept rather than just using a car.
Oh, you mean Einstein and stuff? Okay.
Almost, yes.
Okay. Well, I mean, time travel into the future is easy anyway, right? You don't need anything fancy for that, apart from a great big freezer.
No, you just wait. Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, you wait. But if you want to be in a similar sort of state as you are now, then you make sure you put yourself in a big freezer.
Waiting can entail a very long time span, so...
Yes.
Sometimes you want to be more precise in terms of where you want to go in the future, and also maybe you want to go back to the history or into a point in time of time in history. Anyway, so it's not that difficult when you think about it. I'm going to spare the math because the math actually is a little bit tricky. But if you imagine, Martin, bear with me. It's not that complicated. You have your normal. No, I mean, seriously, you have your normal 3D universe, right? As in, hey...
Well, which one?
X, Y, and Z. Yeah, but the universe that you're living in. That's okay. That means 3 dimensions. Now, if you...
Well, it's debatable, but yeah, Karen.
If you compress these 3 dimensions on a single dimension plane... You have something that you can fold.
Yeah.
Now, if you fold it in the right way, and as I said, I'm going to spare the math because the math is a little bit tricky. If you fold this plane
what happens when you unfold it?
Well, we're going to get to that in a minute, but bear with me. If you then fold it, you can travel between the points that touch each other on that plane in zero distance.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
It just takes a bit of energy and a little bit of complicated math.
Yeah, there's a few sort of practicalities in there that don't work, but never mind.
Exactly. So essentially, I mean,
nice theory.
Warp travel. No, it's not a theory because the Enterprise did it in 2357 or something. No, seriously, I mean, hence the term warp drive. Because essentially that is what you do. You warp that plane until these points touch. And then you are able to travel within almost zero distance But at the same time continuum, but we're going to get to that in a minute, in kind of light speed as an instantaneous. And that's exactly how warp drive works. Now, if you throw a little bit more energy and a little bit of more complicated math into the equation, that means you add a fourth dimension. That means you have your typical time space. You have 3 dimensions, and you have a fourth dimension called time. Now, again, if you compress that on one plane, you can bend that plane.
Mm-hmm.
If then 2 points touch each other, you can not just only travel distance, but you can also travel time. People, you heard it here first. It's not that complicated. You just need a few.
Yeah.
What's the word I'm looking for? Electron volt to make it happen.
Yeah.
So kids don't try this at home because your continent will go dark.
Mm. Well, actually, it all makes sense. This is why.
Yes, Mark. That's the reason why I'm explaining this.
No. It all makes sense. This is why Elon is so successful in the electricity market. Right? He's obviously told us that already.
Who's successful in the electricity market?
Elon.
Me?
Elon. No, Elon.
Elon Musk.
Yes.
How does Mr. Musk feature in that equation, I wonder?
Well,
unless he has time traveled. I don't know.
Yes, of course.
Do you think he's from the future?
Well, I don't, but yeah, people do.
Who does?
I don't know, people.
Okay, fair enough.
I don't know them personally, let's put it that way.
Well, I mean, if he's really from the future, why do his cars have so many flaws in terms of kill people with the autonomous driving, get the software wrong, and all the rest of it?
Well, it's because they're built by people, isn't it?
Yeah, but I mean, if he's from the future, he must have sussed these problems out.
Yeah, but you can't. He doesn't write all bits of code himself, right?
This is the problem. Elon, if you're listening, please do get in touch with us. The email address is feedback@linuxinlaws.eu. We can help you. No worries. Yes. But without further ado now, this episode, as I said, is about 20 years in the future. Let's see basically what happens in 20 years' time. And without further ado, this is the episode. Martin, how are things?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you.
What happened to you? I mean, given the fact that you, after the IPO of something called Linux Inlaws, that you put the this what's what I'm looking for? This concept called altered carbon. The details will be in the show notes into production. Actually, you should sound like myself. Like time didn't affect you. Apparently, that's different.
Of course, yes.
That sounds much better. So you fine-tuned the software. Excellent.
Sure. Yeah. No. I mean, it's I'm quite glad the Linux Inlaws IPO happened because we're still waiting for whatever this wants.
Okay, we're going to shed on the light on the IPO in a few minutes, but before this, we should probably explain. We're recording this in the June of the year 2042. So yes, of course. Lots of things have happened since we came up with the podcast in the year 2020. Probably now's the time because I reckon not that many of the original listenership will be with us in this point of time. We should probably explain how the podcast came into existence. For those people who are new to the podcast, as in have joined within the last 20 years, or cannot remember the first couple of episodes where we explained how the podcast came into existence, actually, the whole idea dates back to an evening in a craft beer bar in the lovely city of Prague when was it, Martin? In November of 2019.
Okay. Yes.
Can you remember?
I remember the craft beer bar. And
that's as far as it goes.
They had chicken wings on a scale of 0 to 10 in hotness.
Yes, in terms of hotness, yes. And Martin chickened out at 2.
I don't think so. No, I think I went for a moderate 5, which.
I think I went for 8 or something, and I deeply regret it.
You were sweating rather a lot, yes, whilst eating them. That's true.
Chicken wings aside, that was the point in time, and we were actually at an outing of a company long gone by now, called then Redis Labs. Afterwards Redis, but the rest is history. But we may touch on this over in the next kind of 2 hours or something, maybe not. Anyway, doesn't matter.
Exactly. I think your recollection of the history of Redis might be different to mine. Anyway,
it doesn't matter. Okay, it's, as I said, I think it's the 19th of November 2019. COVID hadn't hit then yet, anyway. Only maybe in isolated parts of China. I do not know. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Martin and myself are in this craft beer bar and are talking about free and open source software. And over a couple of beers, we came up with the idea of why not do a podcast on this?
Yeah, I think it was inspired by the Outlaws, right?
Yes. We should probably explain where the name comes from.
Well, that's why we got onto the podcast topic.
Yes. There was, of course, a podcast called Linux Outlaws. David Lynch and Fabian Fab Scharschel are probably long dead by now. Maybe not. Hang on there, yeah. No, Dan was older than me, but Fab may be listening. I don't know. Fabian, if you're listening, this is for you. Did a podcast called Linux Outlaws in between 2009, 2010, something like this, and 2014, 2013. And then the podcast stopped. But the format, I'm tempted to say, was somewhat inspired by these two guys, and links will be in the show notes.
Yep.
So the idea was to do a podcast almost similar to Linux Outlaws, but with a spin, with a twist. And that's exactly how Linux Inlaws was born. Hence the name, hence the logo, hence the IPO, hence world domination. But we're going to get into that in a minute.
Yes, very good, very good.
Okay, it was born as a hobby project. But over the years, it developed into something much more serious. We did an initial stats. I mean, okay, first of all, we should probably explain where we hosted the stuff initially. We chose Hacker Public Radio for a reason. Because Hacker Public Radio, don't know when it fell by the wayside, but it must have been in the mid-30s. Maybe I'm wrong.
I think they couldn't cope with the traffic we were producing.
Yes! But then, Martin, we should probably had put aside some of the moolah from the IPO for a proper content delivery network for them.
That's right.
But you have the objective to that. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Okay. We chose Hacker Public Radio for a reason. Because at the time, 2022, 2021, that was the platform of choice for, I'm almost tempted to say, anything goes episodes. You can talk about your experience at a mental hospital. You could talk about COVID stuff or not. You could publicly derail Richard Stallman and all the rest of it. Essentially, it was a free platform for anything, not just free and open source software related. But sadly enough, as Martin already hinted at, due to the roaring success of a somewhat unbeknownst podcast, yes, that platform unfolded in the mid-30s. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So for the last, for the first 10 years, anyway, we successfully hosted the episodes on Hacker Public Radio. Much of the initial automation was written with HPR in mind. That initially drove the podcast. going back to my original remark, what came into existence, I was just getting there, man.
Oh, okay.
What came into existence as a hobby project developed into much more serious stuff after about 2 years. The downloads on Hacker Public Radio alone reached a comfortable 4-figure level. People were scraping us and putting the audio files up on YouTube. And a lot of people who shall go unnamed syndicated us and simply scraped the stuff and hosted the MP3s on their site. Probably just to gain traffic, which is okay, because the episodes were licensed under Creative Commons attribution and share alike. That was the original intent behind the podcast. But given the fact that I still have a co-host...
Yes, we best survive.
Who every now and then talks too. Maybe now's the time to hand it over to Mark to talk about more DeLorean-oriented stuff. Maybe not.
Yeah, I mean, the original DeLorean is obviously not the kind of car that you want. Mentioning the Irish connection, he was a dodgy Irish guy who came up with the idea. And
he lost a lot of money in this, right?
Well, it wasn't his own money. It was the
you
money.
Lost a lot of money.
No.
You bought these DeLorean shares. I thought you bought these DeLorean shares.
Why would I want to do that?
Because that car could travel time.
Okay. I think that's only the one in the movie. I'm afraid.
That was just the one
original DeLorean was somewhat. You have to make the right modifications to do this folding business.
Okay, fair enough. Now, I mean, I went to Belfast in the 90s. And they had a museum in Hollywood, which was just off Belfast, and there was actually DeLorean in that museum, which was quite fascinating because I think the movie was done in the 80s, if I'm not completely mistaken, of the last century.
Correct.
Wow. That's 60 years ago or something. But we're getting old.
Well, as we were talking about earlier, it happens all the time. It's getting older business.
Indeed. So we should probably talk. No, Martin. We should probably now talk about what happened after this pivotal point in time around 2022, when we surprisingly enough had a listenership of more than 10 people.
Yes. Well, what happened after that was that.
I mean, you spoke to Satya, no?
You wanted to retire or something, and so you.
No, I mean, if I recall correctly, you reached out to Satya himself.
Yeah, but that was
with the strange
reason,
idea,
as I mentioned already.
No, with the strange idea that Mr. Nadella, as in Microsoft, should buy the podcast.
No.
I thought you did.
No,
okay.
We don't want anybody to buy the podcast. That's for sure. We're happy for people to sponsor it. Yes. Yes. Don't you remember we had that discussion about the future of the podcast in I think is it the 10th of June 2022, something like that.
Did we?
Yes, we did.
I didn't keep records apparently because I can't recall this. Okay. So maybe you can enlighten me, Martin.
It sounds
apparently
like the memory implant isn't working very well.
No, exactly. So, Martin, maybe now is the time to shed more light on this because apparently your memory is much better than mine.
Well, yes,
so what happened at the 10th of June in 2022?
I paid a small fortune for some extra bits to be added to my brain. Anyway.
No, please go ahead. Did it work out, I wonder?
What did, sorry?
Adding the bits to your brain.
Oh, yes. Yeah, well, that's wonders for your memory. So years of alcohol abuse are wiped out in no time.
Money well spent.
Well, actually, here's a handy tip for you. If you want to improve your brain, drink more alcohol.
I've been doing this for the last 60 plus years.
Okay, good. Well, this is a listener tip, right? It's
seriously, I mean, I wonder if it checks out though.
No, but it's
a so-called long-term study, no?
Yes, well, that too, but it's the alcohol kills off the poorly brain cells, so your brain just gets more efficient and smarter.
That's the fact that alcohol conserves cells, no? I thought it did. Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, if you put them in a jar, yes. But that's
Exactly.
a whole different matter altogether. You probably wouldn't want to do that to yourself. That's
Okay.
That's unwise.
It's called a living experiment, no? Anyway, it doesn't matter. Okay.
Yes. So going back to the 10th of June, 2022.
Yes, by all means, Martin. Go back to your records, please.
Yes. So after you did some digging in the stats of our listenership, you mentioned some numbers of more than 10, which prompted us to discuss the future of the podcast. And I think you mentioned dollars on a number of occasions. For some reason, I don't know why.
At that stage, for the last 2 years, because I was desperately looking for sponsors, yes.
Yes.
But apparently that all changed.
It all changed. They, after that, we had that live listenership published. The sponsors came knocking on the door, in fact. I think you had to upgrade your email server as well, didn't you, to get...
Oh, yeah. D-Wave was kind enough after the SPAC that took place in 2022 in September, if I recall correctly. D-Wave was kind enough to donate a couple of D-Wave 3Ys as the successor of something called a D-Wave 2X. That gave us quantum mail out of the box. Pretty neat machine, but of course now ancient technology.
Indeed.
Funny enough, Martin, whatever happened to this Broadcom acquisition of something called Microsoft, VMware, and NVIDIA?
Say again.
No, I think in
who's buying who?
I mean, Broadcom started with this idea of buying VMware, right? And then didn't stop at Microsoft and of course also NVIDIA, never mind their market cap of being twice the Broadcom market capitalization.
Okay.
I mean, my memory is somewhat failing there. So whatever happened to the VMware acquisition? Do you remember?
No, it's something that's kind of been erased from that part.
Did you preempt this? Okay, fair enough. Let me take a look here. Maybe I have some records.
Okay.
Yes. Oh yeah. Broadcom apparently reached out to somebody in Moscow.
Oh.
But for some reason, Moscow was
anybody we know, or
not personally, anyway.
Okay.
No, but Moscow was short on cash too, which nicely, of course, brings us to the conflict.
They were short on cash. How come? Did
Yes,
finally stop buying gas?
No. No, Russia had to fund this conflict. Back in, I think they started some sort of war in the 2022. It was big news at the time.
It was.
But it's been a while. But if I recall correctly, Martin, and correct me if I'm wrong, the whole thing was to stop NATO in its tracks, as in Poland, and not move any further into the Eastern Hemisphere.
Poland?
Yes.
Oh, stop it at Poland, you mean?
Yes, exactly. Poland became a member of NATO in what, 20...
Oh, quite a while ago.
11? 20, maybe 7? Oh, no. Maybe in the show notes.
Many years ago. Yes. But however, so you were talking about the funding of this activity, no?
Of the war, yes. Germany played a significant role.
Yes. Indeed.
Fortunately, Britain had left the European Union at that stage already.
Great.
In hindsight, a smart move. Too bad that the United Kingdom was gone very short afterwards, because countries like Scotland, Northern Ireland, and Wales decided to defect and join the EU in the 30s. Smart move. So the United Kingdom was reduced to something called England once again, and fell by the wayside, and now serves as a tourist attraction for some US tourists. as it had been the case for the last couple of centuries prior to that.
No. We got lots of Chinese people here.
Sorry, international tourists.
Yes. We don't want to.
Kids at home, it's like Disneyland, only slightly bigger. And
Indeed.
they used to have a queen, but apparently she perished long ago.
Well, you say that, but
But it is now 2042, and she died in what? I can't even remember.
Last year, no?
Last year? Okay, so finally Google really did this prototype in terms of picking Elizabeth II as the... Hey, Martin, you can't be serious. I thought that was classified. Hang on. You having access to Google Internet Records? That's amazing.
Well,
Okay.
you know, the technology
Alphabet
today is considerably more useful than it was in 2022, right? So,
well, we should probably check with the lawyers first, but okay, we might cut this out. Anyway, Alphabet in the year 2027 decided to, well, time travel actually. And at that stage, they wanted to, and this sounds like a wild goose chase, but doesn't matter. They had already, at that stage, technology developed with regards to genetic enhancements. They had been actually doing research on how to delay, if not stop, human aging for the last 10 years in the year 2019 or something like this. So finally, in 2029, they decided to put this technology to a test, travel back in time, and chose, apparently, if Martin's records are anything to go by, Queen Elizabeth II as their first prototype. But apparently it wasn't that successful, because if she died in 2041...
Yes, well, this is temporary, right? So,
she's suspended?
No. So they just so instead of the Google approach to delay aging, there was another more successful company who shall remain nameless.
Why?
For the time being. Well, it's if you...
Do we have stock in the market? SEC, you didn't hear this, and
yes.
we're going to cut this out anyway.
we will publish this at the appropriate time when the stock price is
Maybe
right.
in 2097 or something.
Indeed.
Okay,
yes.
that company
Anyway,
that shall remain nameless. So, what's the crack, Martin?
So they I mean, you know about rebuilding, let's say, tissue from DNA, right? So they completed this process successfully.
There was a documentary in 2087 called The Fly with a actor called Jeff Goldblum. I think.
No, they were shoving him through some portal, and that's not
same. The basic logic was pretty much the same. No.
Well, I guess you have to rebuild the DNA.
That's exactly it. Yes. Mm-hmm. And most of the people actually mistook this movie for a sci-fi movie. Of course, it was a documentary at the time. But as Martin alluded to, the company shall remain nameless.
Yes. It will be all revealed at an appropriate time. Yes. But it has something to do with the Linux Inlaws, of course.
Okay, so what are the details then? If Queen Elizabeth isn't really dead, but just suspended?
Well, no, she is actually dead, but
she is dead. Okay,
she will be rebuilt at the appropriate time for resurrecting the UK to its former glory and taking over the world. Apparently,
that sounds scary, Martin. You're talking about a zombie queen.
No.
I mean, if you revive a dead, that would be properly called a zombie, no?
I think probably you watched...
Well, a royal zombie, fair enough, but still a zombie.
Royal zombie. Um,
No, I mean, seriously, isn't that the term? Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
well, but then there are also people that die temporarily, right? And they are being revived. Would you call those a zombie? Probably not. No, if people have a heart attack
But,
and their heart stops and their brain stops.
Yeah, but I mean,
functioning
that's
for a few
seconds.
minutes. I don't know.
But
some
if you're
people
talking
it's a bit longer.
days or something, I don't know.
Is there a time limit for zombiness?
Ask the director of The Walking Dead or whatever it was called back in the teens or something. I can't remember.
No. So yes,
but before
big thing. Yep.
Sorry, but before we rail any further, we should probably go back to the history of Linux Inlaws. So, Martin, you want to?
Yes.
Yes, we could. If we're pushed for time anyway. So, Martin, you want to shed some light on the history that led us to the IPO, to the initial public offering of something called Linux Inlaws in the year, when was it, 28 or something?
Well, it all came about with the final successful construction of the let's say the non-D-Wave version of the time travel, right? So, which meant that we could influence the future of many things.
Which, of course, we didn't, because that would violate time travel rules. Martin,
well, I'm not talking about physical things. It's more
okay.
Simple, right?
But Martin, please regard the classified information here. Given the fact that this episode might be shipped back to the year 2022,
yes.
we should be a little bit scarce on the details. So, Martin, the big picture that led us to the IPO will do nicely.
Yes. Well, the big picture is that we successfully marketed our podcast, really, which, being of such great content as per all our thousands of reviewers for every episode is testament to.
This is the 20 million foot view.
Indeed. Yes.
As in the one sentence explanation why the IPO actually happened. Okay, we can probably review the details now. Unfortunately, we cannot go into a low level of detail because the SEC might shut us down, and that probably.
Oh, it's already happened now, so it's.
Well, no, I mean, going on in terms of. Some things should remain nameless in terms of not revealed, because otherwise some people will be able to, well, let's put it this way, make the share price tank.
Yes, and obviously
and that's not great.
Competing podcasts with the
But Martin, you see, if that happens, some of our institutional investors will not be pleased. And Martin, you don't want to have the Mexicans and the Russians after the rebuilding of their empire, but we're going to go into the details in a minute, on your doorstep. No, you don't. So to give the kind of brief outline, Alphabet and Microsoft got into the bidding war over the rights. Martin got a phone call from a guy called Satya Nadella, and a guy called Sundar Pichai rang me in 2025, I think, with this hilarious proposition of they might buy the podcast then and there.
Indeed.
After about 5 years of hinting at the fact that there is an email address called sponsor@linuxinlaws.eu, and that never received any mails from neither Microsoft nor Google.
Hang on a minute. No, it's not possible that what's his name? This Microsoft guy rang me, because you're already the Microsoft user amongst us, aren't you?
No,
I use Gmail most of the time, so it's it can't possibly be that Microsoft has my details to contact me.
Your wife uses a Windows computer, if I'm not completely mistaken.
Yeah, but that doesn't have my phone number on it. So.
This is what you think, or thought anyway. Anyway, to cut a long story short, both offers were declined.
Yes.
But if we thought at the time that if these two chaps were anything to
You
go
forgot
by,
about the third chap anyway.
you're not talking about
Did I not mention
You're not
him?
talking about this car guy, are you?
No. Did I not mention the third guy at
No,
the
you
time?
didn't.
I can't remember now.
So take a look at your records.
But did I not mention him to you?
Oh, no, you haven't.
Oh, okay. Well, there was another guy who rang with an offer.
He rang you, but he didn't ring me.
No.
But you never disclosed. But you never told me. So
No,
Martin,
because
Martin, now's the time
well,
to come clean.
He offered twice as much as what's his name, Satania or something like that.
Satya, that used to be the CEO of something called Microsoft. Yes,
indeed. Yeah. So anyway, this guy, I think his name was Jeff or something. Jeff from somewhere. Anyway,
Jeff Goldblum, the actor.
No.
He was living in 20. Okay, 20 is amazing. I thought he was dead by 2027.
Jeff, what's his name? Bezos? Yeah, him.
Ah, the chap
rang,
from the bookshop.
Yes, bookshop guy.
Yes!
Yeah, he rang up as well. Yeah. Yes.
I thought he had sold the bookshop at that stage because he had to
he still had a
cover
lot of
some
money left.
expensive
He needed
divorce
a new
or
hobby.
something.
Yes. No, he sold.
Hey, hang on. Martin, hang on. He got divorced in 2020 or something, no?
Oh, I don't know. I don't read Hello magazine like you.
Are you serious? You have given up your subscription once again, Martin? You're serious? That's amazing.
You keep renewing it for me, but I don't need.
Martin, there is a reason for this.
Okay, it's important information in there.
Yes, so that you do not fall out with reality once and for all.
Okay, let's see.
And your wife apparently likes it too. Because every now and then she sends me thank you notes.
Okay.
Maybe they're fake. I don't know. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Okay,
yeah.
back to. No, I mean full disclosure. Jeff Bezos, if you're really talking about him, had to finance. Let's put it this way, a very expensive divorce. I think it was in 2020. Details maybe in the show notes. Because after 20 plus something years of successful marriage. Where I actually built a little empire from an online bookshop into something much, much bigger. He started to ditch the wife, or the other way around, I can't even remember. And there was some serious money involved. And he also had to sell the Washington Post afterwards, which he bought prior to the divorce.
Yeah, so he rang up and he said, "No, look, I had to sell this bookshop and fund my wife's divorce and stuff like that in the Washington Post. So I have a few
shillings left.
I have a few shillings left, and I really need.
Okay.
I really need this podcast, so please sell it to me. That's kind of how it went.
So what did you say? What did you tell him then?
Well, I'll tell them no because we already had two better offers, and we don't like the bookshop anyway. So that's kind of.
Do we not? Okay.
No, we don't.
So to cut a long story short, after these 3D offers that were kindly declined, we put the whole format in front of, let's put it this way, a couple of different institutional investors.
We can't go into
the details. Thanks
for legal reasons, yes.
Exactly. Thanks to the Security and Exchange Commission. Anyway, it doesn't matter. These institutional investors shall remain nameless. No, and money laundering doesn't have anything to do with it before anybody gets some strange ideas. Totally legit. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So we IPO'd the whole thing in when was it? July 27th of 27th, as in 2027. Which brings us rather to a somewhat sad interlude, because a guy called, what's his name again? Leo Lepron or something of Twit fame tried an unfriendly takeover just after the IPO. Leo, if you're listening, I don't know if you're still alive, probably not. Or Leo's successor at
I won't be listening then.
Maybe technology has advanced a lot. So, Twit, if you're listening, let's put it this way: that wasn't nice. You could have sent us an email, and we could have talked before you tried to take us over in an unfriendly way. And in that case, we wouldn't have to send parts of our institutional investors your way to sort it out. Too bad Twit didn't make it.
Yes.
Afterwards.
Yeah.
There was some sort of ruckus, I can't remember. I still have to take a look at the police records, but apparently it wasn't pleasant. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Which put another...
I do not remember, in 2032 we took over Twit and renamed it to something else.
What was left of it, exactly, because it came at a bargain price.
Yes, indeed.
Yes, podcast history all the way. Excellent, yes. So, of course, and in 2037, Martin, by some strange accident, came across a TV show called Altered Carbon. Some producers took the idea and rebranded it, I think, in 2022 and called it Upload. Same thing, only a little bit funnier. But anyway, the concept still remained the same. But Martin, at the time, already had made his few billions from the IPO. So for those of you who do not know Altered Carbon, maybe, Martin, you want to go into the details?
I think you mean trillion, surely, because by then
trillion,
was
of
like
course, yes.
1,000 times or something. Yeah.
So, Martin, what exactly did you do with this Altered Carbon thing?
Well, as you most of our listeners are aware, there's a
maybe not.
Well, I'm sure everybody's familiar with Moore's law, right? About the duplication of processing power every 2 years, which is after a certain point became no longer the case because of the size of the actual physical transistors. So the thing is, silicon was the basis of all microprocessors, which has its physical limits and so on and so on.
Well spotted, yes.
So at a certain point, we moved on to transistors based on something else altogether, which is only one carbon atom thick. And so this exploded the computing growth again. Hence the name.
Yes,
Altered Carbon, because it was the...
Almost. Martin may be getting a little bit old, so let me fill Martin in on the details.
Well, this is the carbon I was talking about. Yeah.
Altered Carbon was a TV series in the teens, I think, if I recall correctly, and exactly,
what was
the idea
TV
was 2015, 2016, something. I can't remember.
We still have
so the idea was,
okay.
The idea was essentially to upload your consciousness into something called the cloud. Now, what Martin actually did, he took the concept, and Martin is not too far off the carbon here, and merged something called D-Wave
D-Wave is
14. Yes. So essentially, Martin took the concept of this cloud upload.
Isn't that illegal to copy people's?
Martin, it was in 2016.
Oh, okay.
But it wasn't in 2035 exactly.
Okay.
Because remember, you bribed the Senate to get some legislation in, and it just cost you $500 million or something. It wasn't too expensive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, kiddies, don't try this at home. Martin had the funds at his disposal at that stage, and it was somewhat a little bit on the dodgy side. Let's put it this way. Oh, before I forget,
creative, not dodgy.
Yes, creative. That would be that would come. That would be the right. Yeah, that would be the right expression. Okay. Anyway, to cut a long story short, Martin actually merged the technology of something called a D-Wave C14, which was the successor of the 2X that D-Wave released in 2016 or something like that. D-Wave at that stage wasn't just a quantum annealing company anymore. Picture IBM quantum technology merged with what Microsoft didn't reveal until 2040. And you don't even come close to something that D-Wave was up to. Essentially, you're talking about temporal quantum technology. So not just quantum annealing, but rather technology that will allow you to send quantums back and forth in time. Meaning, you can do some of your computations in the past, and some of your computations in the future, and some of your computations in the present. Which doesn't just give you exponential speed up, but rather something much more faster. Let's put it this way. And that's exactly what Martin used to put this altered carbon thing into play, into reality. And that's exactly how we have survived so far.
Mm.
And chances are we might survive even longer.
Oh,
so we might do this podcast again in 2142.
Well,
maybe not.
Every 100 years, right? That makes sense.
Exactly.
Yes. Very good. Very good.
So, before we close off the show, because we have been rambling on now for at least an hour, if not more, should we shed some light on the conflict?
Part one, no? Yes.
Exactly. This is only part one of a 27-part miniseries of the history of something called Linux Inlaws. Exactly. Before we close off this part one, should we shed more light on Russia, the conflict, and what happened afterwards?
Yes, we could do this.
Give it a shot, Martin.
Well, as I recall, the special operation was very unsuccessful to start with.
But only for the first 17 years, right?
No, there was a certain turning point where someone in the Russian military actually decided to use some tactics rather than just shove a lot of people in a certain place. And
smart move,
indeed. So they actually got somewhere. But then, and so the next thing that happened after that, there was kind of a temporary pause because they captured the east bit, and so they thought, well, that's shall we stop now? But
Finland and Sweden and Norway already had joined the NATO because they were able to bribe Turkey into this vote, right?
Yes.
With some serious moolah.
Yeah. Well, not just them. It was partly funded by various other countries, the Turkey bribe. But
unfortunately, we can't go into the details.
Yeah, we can't go into the details on this either. But then, sadly, our friend in Russia died of a disease. And
I thought it was an unnatural cause. Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, the official story was that he died of cancer, but anyway.
This is what you call a headshot, okay? Some people call it murder, but that's my interpretation of the matter.
Yeah, it's indeed. So, unfortunately, after that, there was a guy who took over. What was his name? Igor Schultz or something. And he thought, now, hang on a minute, this was my friend. So he joined forces with...
You mean Georg Schröder?
Oh, yes, him, yes.
Georg Schröder? The chancellor, yes.
Yes. So he was great friends with our Russian friend. So he thought, well, why don't I take over this country as well? And then I'll make one great big sort of Central European supernation, which didn't go down well with NATO either, to be fair. So that didn't last long. So
I think 2 months or something, right?
something like that. So sadly, part of this country was that country was somewhat destroyed in the process, but the beer production stayed constant, so that was good.
Good news. I mean, the long and short of it is actually the European Union put a lot of money into rebuilding the Ukraine, and then with the interest of that money, Ukraine was actually able to buy the western part of something called Russia, and the Chinese, because of their again rising economy, bought the rest. So about almost 2,000 years of Russian history was put to rest in about the time span of about a fortnight. Of course, rising shares in the US helped a lot, but that's a different story. The rest is in the history books.
It is.
Yes. So, children, on to part number 2.
On to part number 2, where we shall actually discuss more of the technology advancements that we had over the last 20 years.
Indeed. Part 2 is penciled currently in for the 2nd of July in the year 2142. So stay tuned.
Indeed, yes. Stay tuned. There will be more.
Yes, and of course, if you have any feedback on this episode, you can of course send mail to our quantum mail in the system. The email address hasn't changed in the last 22 years. It's still feedback@linuxinlaws.eu. So feel free. But it's now the case that any spam, any phishing emails that you send to that mail address will be filtered out in the past, the present, and the future concurrently. Because that's exactly what quantum mail technology is all about at the end of the day. Anyway, so bottom line is, don't bother sending spam to that mail address. But of course, serious feedback, and that includes Laura, Biku, and our long-term listeners, is always appreciated. Never mind money. Every suggestion counts.
Not money, but sponsorship.
No, okay, we don't need money anymore. Fair enough, but it's a suggestion that counts, Martin. So if people want to send us a small amount of money, like $1 trillion or something, just as a gesture, that will do the trick nicely. PayPal donations are accepted, of course, too.
Hang on a minute. You missed. Are you? You still have dollars in your country? That's surely not.
No, they're called euros. That hasn't changed.
Oh, the rest of the world has moved on to this new cryptocurrency, haven't they?
When was that?
Did you not remember in 2029? Yeah, 2029.
I'm old, Martin.
Well, yes.
So are you.
Indeed, we both are. Yeah.
You mean after Bitcoin tanked finally?
Yes. So this. Okay. Well, we may as well reveal the one part of the success was the
please
the development of the Linux Inlaws coin.
and exactly now we go again about Martin's Ethereum successes. No, Martin actually did his own cryptocurrency called Inlaws coins. Yes. Too bad it tanked about 2 months after the initial ICO.
No. Yeah, that was just a small hiccup. After that, it became the worldwide
exactly.
Yes. Yes. Your memory is really bad, isn't it? You need to fix that.
Martin, of course, learned from his mistakes, and Inlaws coin 2.0 was much more successful. It lasted for about 3 weeks instead of 2.
We're now on version 10.1.
No, Martin is working on exactly version 27,447. It's not a completely mistake. Well done, Martin. Just good enough that we had the IPO in place by then already. So we didn't have to rely on Martin's dodgy coins.
No, they're not called dodgy coins. They're called Inlaws coins.
I thought they were going to
got the wrong coin there.
Anyway, of course, this is by no means an investment advice. Kids, don't try this at home. Do not invest in bitcoins if even after the revival. Never mind dodgy coins or Inlaws coins. These cryptocurrencies are highly volatile. You only know what you're doing. My advice.
No. We had an episode on cryptocurrencies in...
That was in September, October 2022, yes.
Was that in 22 as well? Okay.
Yeah, it was. Yes. You
already lots of things happened in 22, didn't they?
It always did, yes.
The memory is crystal clear for that one.
You laid out the flawed concept of something called Inlaws coins, yes. Then and there. If I recall correctly, that is.
I think that was probably the first iteration, yeah.
Yes, the prototype. As in the pre-prototype that thankfully enough never made it out of the dungeons.
Yes, but then I also highlighted the successful production version.
About 10 years after that, yes. Maybe 15. Before we leave this episode, as in kind of before we close this off.
Oh yes.
This review thing. There are two important subjects that we should just tackle.
Oh yeah.
Namely, was it really worth the whole thing, the whole time, the last 22 years?
Well, that speaks for itself, no? Otherwise, you wouldn't be doing it. You wouldn't be doing it for so long.
I mean, there are ups and downs. I mean, there was this incident where, as I said, as we discussed, a couple of unfriendly takeover attempts.
Oh yes, yeah.
But then we managed to salvage the war at the end of the day. So I reckon that's good news.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's good news. It's been fun.
Any other troughs that come to mind?
Troughs.
As in things we could have done better.
Things you could have done better. Yeah.
I mean, your coin thing, your coin disaster was probably not the greatest idea.
No.
For the uninitiated, Martin tried a few ICOs and that failed miserably. We discussed the details early on.
We did. Yeah.
Further details maybe on your favorite news archive sites or not.
Yeah. Let's see what else. Yeah, I think the biggest I guess drawback is that we left the sponsorship really late, right? So, which meant that we were fighting infrastructure for a long time.
Yeah, but I mean, Martin, you always had this crazy idea of going for an IPO right away. I mean, I could just keep you in check for the first couple of years.
Well,
I think 5 or something like this.
It's a bit difficult doing an IPO without being listed.
But Martin, I mean, the really great things that comes to mind was actually your excellent expertise on bot programming, because that really finally drove up the numbers. Fair play to you.
Bot programming. Yes.
The trouble, of course, is that actually Cyberdyne sent a Terminator back in time to rectify this because of some shorting of our stock.
I see.
But needless to say, Martin's clever AI instances kind of detected this early on, and this attempt was futile, needless to say. Again, the rest may be on your favorite news archive site. So, Martin, the very final question, would you do it again?
Well, you don't need to do it again. We've already done it. So we're not doing another 22 years.
Okay. Why not? Just because you're 120 years old?
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, this alternate carbon thing really worked well, so why not give it another go?
No, but we don't need to do 22 years again because we were done 22, so we just do another 22. Yes. That makes more sense.
I mean, picture this: you're, for some strange odd reason, never mind coincidence, whatever you want to call it, maybe manifests folding in the wrong way. You're back in 2019. It's November. You're back in Prague. You're in this IPO.
In a room with people. Yes.
In the craft bar, and there's this nutter talking to you about this kind of strange, fucked up idea of doing a podcast on open source.
Mm-hmm.
You would still be game.
Well, good thing you stepped in at the time, because then we got rid of the nutter.
Smart thinking, Mr. Bishop, just in time. Now that all questions have been answered, let's reconvene in another kind of 22 years.
Chris, we have some feedback.
Oh, we do indeed, yes. Why don't you read it, and then I'm going to tear this apart. No, I'm joking.
So, episode 56.
That was the Slackware one, right? If I
That's
recall
right. Yeah.
yes.
So Brian in Ohio has kindly commented, and he says, what? This guy doesn't use Slackware? How can he have a user perspective? Well, if you are a user, if you use it, then obviously he has used it, so he has a user perspective. Anyway, you should interview Klaatu or ZenFloater to get a user perspective on Slackware. Listen to the previous HBR by the aforementioned ZenFloater on the Alive and Well Slackware 15. One last thing, dependency management is available if you use Slack builds to add third-party software. You must add the dependencies yourself. Listen to GNU World Order for a better explanation. These guys need to listen to HBR, not just use it as a no-cost place to host their mediocre content.
Nice one, Brian.
Thank you, Brian. Yes.
Brian, that was very insightful. Let's put it this way. Needless to say, we have to edit this because we do not necessarily plug other podcasts that are mentioned in comments. No, jokes aside, of course. People feel free to check out GNU World Order and other podcasts touching on the subject. But needless to say, the reason why we brought Lars on the podcast was a simple one. He had been using it at the time. He had been using Slackware for at least 10 to 15 years. And that was actually the reason why we brought him on, because of his comprehensive Slackware experience. And Klaatu or ZenFloater, if you're listening, needless to say, get in touch, and we are more than happy to do a second episode on Slackware with you being around. The email address is feedback@linuxinlaws.eu. Simply send a mail, and we'll take it from there. And Brian, of course, you're more than happy to also come with the podcast for more insightful.
This is the Linux Inlaws.
You come for the knowledge,
but stay for the madness.
Thank you for listening.
This podcast is licensed under the latest version of the Creative Commons license, type Attribution Share Alike. Credits for the intro music go to Blue Sea Roosters for their song Solid Market, to Twin Flames for their piece called The Flow, used for the segment intros, and finally to Celestial Ground for their song Sweet Justice, used by the Dark Side. You find these and other ditties licensed under CC at Jamendo, a website dedicated to liberate the music industry from choking copyright legislation and other crap concepts.
Listening to Hacker Public Radio at hackerpublicradio.org. Today's show was contributed by a HPR listener like yourself. If you ever thought of recording a podcast, then click on our contribute link to find out how easy it really is. Hosting for HPR has been kindly provided by anhonesthost.com, the Internet Archive, and rsync.net. Unless otherwise stated, today's show is released under a Creative Commons Attribution 4.0 International License.